I am paging Dr. Shonda.
I am the
Dr. Shonda.
And I'm a licensed clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Paging Dr. Shonda podcast, all things related to the Black culture.
You got the doctor in front of your name.
Stop scrolling for 1 second. This month, we are bringing back the psychology of Black women, the online class brought to you by yours truly, Dr. Shonda, licensed clinical psychologist. Y'all, I've been getting so many questions about why anxiety and depression presents differently in Black women. What do we do about it? How can we start to combat this? And what are some of the reasonings behind it? Listen, if you are a Black woman who has questions about anxiety and depression, it's something you experience or something your loved ones experience, or if you're a professional who works with Black women who experience anxiety and depression, I promise you this class is for you. Make sure that you sign up today. Hey, what's up, everybody? You are now listening to the Paging Dr. Shonda show. I am your host, Dr. Shonda, and here we encourage self-reflection through meaningful conversation. I am so excited to hop into today's discussion because we are talking about the Real Housewives of Potomac. And we have none other than DJ Richie Skye with us today. DJ Richie Skye, please introduce yourself to the people because we're excited.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. For those who don't know me, I actually was on a Bravo show in about, 2018. I was on a show called Stripped, where they take all of your possessions for 21 days, and then you are forced to see how you live without those possessions, and you get one thing back every day. So they take everything, including your clothes, your car, your money, everything. So you got to kind of figure it out. So that was pretty neat. I had already come from the world of journalism, and I was already recapping shows at AfterBuzz TV. So after I left the news world, I just said, you know what? I was having a conversation with Funky Daniva, who said, you know what? You should just do what you were doing at your news show and just do it yourself on YouTube. And honestly, it's been nonstop ever since. And the funny thing about it is we were laid off from the news show, like on a Friday. I remember it. It was me and my co-host. She's actually a Real Housewife of Miami. She was on season 2. And so I remember we went into work that Friday. We did our jobs, and the next thing you know, we're being called into the green room, and they're like, well, this is your check for your last week. And we were just like stumped. Yeah, we were really stumped. And so I had to pivot really, really quickly. I mean, I thank God it just happened to all work in my favor. But now it's kind of nice because I get asked to come to news stations now, whereas before it was like I was scrambling to try to work in news. And the funny thing about it is, when the last day, I was actually kind of relieved because I discovered that type of news just wasn't for me. So I felt like God moved me into this position, and I'm just running with it.
That's amazing. I was literally just about to say that. Like, that literally sounds like God's plan, like all over it. Like literally shutting one door so you can walk through another. Period.
Yep. And if you don't shut it, God will shut it for you.
Come on, that's a whole word. You about to start preaching. Okay, so first of all, I love your content. I am a huge fan of when you review like the Real Housewives of Potomac. I was watching one day, you were talking about colorism, and I was like, yo, he's so intellectual. And then you was like, yeah, Nneka, you should read this article. I was like, oh my God, that's my article. I wrote that. So I was like, okay, let me reach out to him since he's, he doesn't know who I am, but he's familiar with my work. And hopefully we can just have a conversation about this. And I'm so happy that you accepted the invitation. And so first things first, I want to hear about your thoughts on this season.
I started watching Housewives way back when, like near the beginning. And I remember thinking to myself, I love seeing behind the gates of these like rich women and their husbands and these like petty little fights and drama. And it felt like a relief, right? And as we've kind of gone on through the seasons, certain shows have become, I don't know, they feel a little weighed down, and maybe it's because they've been on for so long that now what used to come naturally is now produced. Does that make sense? So it almost feels like women have seen the shows or even the husbands have seen the show, so they kind of go in thinking that this is what I need to do in order to be successful on the show. So I think we see a lot of that now, and I think that there's also too perhaps a level of overproduction, meaning like maybe there's sometimes instances where it feels like the producers have their hands a little bit too much in the mix instead of just letting the ladies fly. You know what I'm saying? And instead of creating storylines, just finding people with interesting stories, which to me is very different. That's just who you are innately. What makes you interesting? What makes you intriguing? What makes you pop on camera? And I think if they spent more time with that in the casting and figuring out how the ladies work well together before they start filming, like that's what they used to do back in the day. They used to test these people like rigorously and see who actually worked. And now it's kind of like they are, as we saw with Potomac, this is a good example. Andy says production wanted us to bring in Nneka through Wendy. Well, that does not work because Wendy does not know Nneka. Yes, these are two beautiful Nigerian women. So what? They should automatically know each other and automatically get along. Just because they are two Nigerian women does not mean that they are going to have as much common ground as you think. So it's I don't even think that anybody thought that through. And when he said it, I thought it really revealed a lot about, to the audience. I think a lot of us knew that y'all be putting people together, aka Fallon and Portia, and they're not friends. And then you see what happens. You see the aftermath of these things. Point, Wendy and Nneka, Portia, Fallon. I mean, these are just two examples out of many that we've seen over the past several years. So I say all that to say that where Potomac is in this season, it just feels overproduced, and the cast is so divided, and a show can't be successful with that level of division. It just can't be. It's not interesting to the audience.
It's not interesting, and it's also, it feels like a chore to watch now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really
it's heavy.
does.
It's so heavy.
It's really, really heavy. And then I think when you introduce aspects of culture that probably shouldn't be discussed as entertainment, I think you have taken a complete wrong turn, and everybody's responsible now.
Yes. My culture is not entertainment. White supremacy is not entertainment. And if y'all gonna put it out there, I think it needs to be properly addressed. But we're gonna get there. You're bringing up so many great points. And I 100% agree with you. I think that it's gotten to a place where it is highly produced as opposed to allowing it to be organic, which was something that I think a lot of viewers enjoyed when RHOP like first got on the scene, right? It was a group of Black women who like some people were familiar with, or if you're from the DMV or whatever, and they were just living their lives. And it's like now highly produced. It's not giving what it used to give. And so DJ Richie, Skye, I'm wondering when it comes to the reunion, right? So like how things have been playing out. There was a significant piece in the reunion where Gordon was opening up about some significant things that he was experiencing. And because I'm a psychologist, like my ears lit up, and he was talking about bipolar disorder and how he was recently diagnosed. I'm wondering, as a viewer, what was your reaction to that?
I was actually shocked. I thought it was going to be something medical related, but I did not think it was going to be that. But then when he started to explain it, it started to fill in pieces of the puzzle with Mia and Gordon that I didn't quite understand. And even looking back at the reunion now, I just feel like the way he showed up for her in that moment to clarify so much of her story, but also to share his own and to be that open about mistakes that he's made and, where it's gotten him, and to be that, just that open. I just thought that was, I've never seen, I don't think if we have seen it, it's been a while since we've seen a husband come through with that level of just openness and transparency. And I just thought it was though it was we don't wish that on anybody, but the moment that he made it was such a bright light in a shiny, in a dark cavern.
Mhm. Yeah, it was such a significant moment because I don't know if we've ever had maybe housewives, but I don't know if we've ever had a husband talk about like mental health in that capacity, especially a Black one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what makes it such a significant moment. And I'll speak for myself. I don't know if this was your experience, but like, of course, like when we're watching the Housewives, we can be judgmental, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
dang, that's so toxic for him to do X, Y, and Z. That's, petty for her to do X, Y, or Z. And so I'm watching Gordon kind of like being judgmental. Like, why would you take her money? Why are you spending so much money? Da, 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 da. But he was talking about like, yeah, that's like bipolar 1 disorder. That's how mania often presents in patients. And for me, it was like, dang, I was really judging him without actually seeing the full story. So I loved the transparency in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wonder, I
Yeah.
mean, just thinking about it from your lens, what did you feel, especially him as a Black man? Because also that's, I think, a significant aspect that we haven't really touched on either. Like that it's not often that you see a Black man on television on a reality TV show talking about a diagnosis like that. This is something that they could have kept hidden. And we would have just been, and he would have had, to be honest, he would have had every right to, because that is a medical situation. He didn't have to share that. So when I look at it from that point of view, it's like, you don't have Black men on these platforms speaking about this. And not that you would, right? Not because every Black man isn't facing that, but I just thought that was significant too. And I just kind of wanted to know, do you think that opens any doors for viewers watching to like, what does that mean for you? I think I want to know that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, like shout out to Gordon, because a part of the work of being a psychologist is to destigmatize, especially in the Black community. Far too often we say things like, you got to man up, you got to always be strong, da, 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 da. And that's especially true for Black men, like having that type of mentality. So the fact that he was able to be vulnerable, and not just vulnerable with his family, vulnerable with millions of people watching all over the world, like that just speaks to the level of strength that he has. And so I think that in itself can open doors for other Black men to talk about these things, because granted, we don't really talk about mental health in the community. If we do, like if Black men are on platforms or whatever talking about mental health, it's usually depression, it's usually anxiety. I've never really heard a Black man talk about I've been diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder.
Yeah.
Like that's significant, and that's something that we needed to see.
And I would almost think I think that there's a level of shame that probably comes along with it too. I mean, I think about myself, if I had to say that, I think I might feel ashamed.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this as an honest response to that, because I'm just processing it in my head. Like, no one wants to have a mental issue. And so to really just be able to say there is something going on and I don't always know how to control it. I just thought it was huge.
Yeah, it is. And the fact that he was able to move past the shame and to actually talk about it, he was able to remove the shame from other people who might be experiencing it, who didn't have the platform or the voice to be able to talk about it yet. So such a significant moment. Shout out to Gordon for that, for real. Yeah, I'm here for it.
I did read something.
Ahead.
I just want to mention this. It's so funny. I'm reading this book right now because I do this thing where in the mornings I try to read nonfiction and nighttime I try to read fiction.
That's cute. I love
like
that.
I'm a nerd. So one of the books that I'm reading is called Relentless. I hate to actually put this in this way, but it's a really good book. But one of the aspects is they're talking about being in this like zone or whatever. And I read this quote and it made me question it. And so it's like the statement was, emotions make you weak. And he was talking about it in the context of being in the zone, right? And having something take you out of that zone when it's time for you to perform, right? And I think what happens is, especially for men, we are taught that exact thing. Emotions make you weak. But I think we're not taught enough, or we don't talk about enough when that is maybe more true than not, right? When to get out of your feelings and into your focus versus saying that emotions make you weak, because that's a blanket statement and many men don't know how to separate that.
Right.
So I just
And the
wanted
beauty.
to
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
express that as a response to
Yeah.
what you just said.
Yeah, no, I love where this conversation is going, because the beauty is to be able to experience both without judgment. So not judging myself of feeling the emotions, and also being able to have that logic so I can get in the zone and do X, Y, or Z, handle the business that I need to. And I want to ask you, so like as a Black man, how can we provide more spaces where y'all feel comfortable talking about emotions like Gordon did?
I think it has to happen within the groups of men in general, because
Yeah.
I think right now what we're seeing, I mean, and this is going to take that's a different turn that I could take, but I think what we're seeing right now is this kind of movement where it almost feels like a response to like women, kind of owning their power at this point in time.
Mhm.
And so I feel like what's also happening as a response to that is, I feel like there are some sections or some groups of men who are now feeling like, oh, well, that's an attack on us, because I mean, they're not supposed to have as much power as they're getting now. And it's, what is this? And it's this movement that I feel like I'm seeing in the community of men when I look at like, podcasts and stuff like that. So I really think it's about men and women having conversations together,
Yeah.
somewhat like we're having right now, to
Yeah.
say, hey, like, well, when do you feel like this? Why do you feel like this? And to have a conversation and be willing to say, you know what? Maybe I said the wrong thing. Maybe I'm thinking the wrong things, but I do think that everything requires conversation. Even a conversation
sure.
about even colorism requires a conversation. And it also requires I don't know how to say this correctly, but it just requires like no judgment. Because when
Yeah.
you start to get into the critical nature and the nuances of these conversations, we're going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make mistakes. So if people come to the table honestly from the point of view where they are, at least being open to hearing this perspective and saying, well, how do we meet in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how we get to a place of beginning to heal some of the traumas that we are internally experiencing, even just as men. I feel like we still have to have those. We have to be able to come together and have those conversations. And I think a lot of men aren't really willing to have the deeper conversations, not necessarily about, well, why are women getting all this power? Or why is, this happening and this happening and this happening, versus saying like, how do we, as especially Black men and Black women, how do we come together so that this is an equitable relationship, regardless of whether it's friendship, whether it's community building, whether it's work, whether it's politics, any of those things? How do we begin to come together and support each other? Because if we can't do that amongst ourselves, then we definitely can't go out into the broader world. Okay. So you can't, and let's take it back to colorism, because I can go left with this.
Yeah.
If we can't do it, how will we expect these network executives to process a conversation that we can't even have?
It can't be done. It can't be done. Right.
It will not be done. And they
okay,
will
so
not
let's talk. Yeah. They will not what? Say that again.
They will not get it.
Nah.
The network will not get it. The casual viewer will not get it.
Nope. Okay, so it sounds like you do agree that colorism does exist on this cast.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what have been your thoughts while seeing this unfold throughout the seasons and like things that have transpired over the reunion?
I think that there is a oh my God, this is layered, man. Like,
I know.
I think the first thing is, I'll go back to my first, I think the first time I heard the term colorism, because I'd never been able, I think it wasn't until recent years where I actually recognized that was a term, to be honest with you. I'm gonna be straight up. Like, I've always known that there was this, take it back to school days, right? You had the good and bad hair, situation.
Right.
And for whatever reason, this is where I was telling you before we got on that I was going to be honest. I always just assumed that related only specifically to women. So I thought that was really a thing, that it never really occurred to me that there was a broader issue. I just thought that because of school days, and you hear little things when you grow up, depending on where you grew up, especially in the South, like in Virginia, like I did,
Yeah.
you hear little things and you hear little remarks and stuff like that. But, for me, I didn't see it. But also too, I recognized that I'm a man and I'm a light-skinned man. So I don't, I look back at my life now, and I often wonder when I'm having these conversations about it with my community, like, how am I being received when I'm having these conversations? If I'm pointing out what I feel like is colorism, but I'm a light-skinned man, do I have that right? Has some level of privilege gotten me into spaces where I might not have gotten otherwise?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I do know is I'm willing to at least ask the question, might it have gotten me into these places? Could it have played a part in getting me access to something? And that is the part where I feel like Potomac fails.
Yes.
The women who are, I think, who have the privilege, or the perceived privilege, I should say, they are unwilling to look at, how might my actions be impacting the group in such a way that the audience feels like I am either a colorist, or colorism is happening? And then B, how do I stop being so afraid of the word colorist that I stop at least trying to understand what they are experiencing? Because I think that also plays a factor in it too. This fear of, like, you labeled me a colorist. Like, that's all I heard. So now I can't even have a conversation because I'm so sensitive about it. Versus saying, like what you said, you're not even willing to ask yourself, well, what did I do something? Like, am I being perceived a way, and maybe I'm unaware? And then, do I care?
And that's the unfortunate part, right? So if we're going to have conversation, well, first of all, you said a lot that I want to unpack.
I know.
No. This is great though. This is great. Okay. So to the Fox Soul community, you guys are getting the shorter version. So if you want the longer version, make sure you go to my page. But you talked about, like, okay, do we even have the right to talk about these types of things? Because, like, if you're of a certain complexion, is it even received well? And I will say, that's like a comment that I get a lot. I talk about this a lot on my social media pages. I get some people who are like, you're this complexion, you don't even know what racism is, I have other people saying, thank you for using your privilege in order to be able to talk about this type of stuff. Because if I was a woman who was darker complected, or who it is being I'm being impacted by colorism or whatever, which some could argue that it could happen, but different conversation. But if I am on that other side, like, people might not receive it as well, right? And it's just like from a racism perspective, if a white person is standing up saying, no, y'all, this is actually like racism, white people, this is white supremacy here, let's address this, as opposed to, like, somebody black saying, no, this is racism or whatever. Like, it's received so differently. So I totally hear you, and I empathize with that perspective. And even going back to what you were saying about, like, the I call it fragility, right? So I call it light skin fragility, if I'm gonna be honest. Hearing somebody talk about colorism and saying I operate in this way or whatever, I automatically causes me to be in tears and fall apart or whatever. Like, what were your thoughts when you saw Robin's tears of fragility?
I mean, whenever somebody cries on TV, I look for the tears. I'm like, I got a magnifying glass up to the screen. Like, is there any water running? Is the mascara running? Like, what is really
Nope.
happening? And I didn't see it, right? So I assumed that she was having what felt to me like an overreaction in order to express how horrified she was at the way that Candace was expressing to Giselle how she felt Giselle used her privilege. She didn't say that to Robin. Maybe the audience has said it to Robin, but Candace did not. Candace directed that toward Giselle. Robin took it on. So
Yeah.
either she's taking it on from simply Candace or Candace and the audience, and now is directing the horror at Candace, which is
Okay.
tricky, right? Because now you
Yeah.
have made Candace responsible for your feelings. That's a whole other level to me of manipulation right there, because now everybody's just pointing a gun at Candace, who has been told, tone it down.
Oh my gosh. Okay, can we get into that?
And take every bullet that anybody that wants to throw at you right now, because they were definitely throwing them. So it does kind of go into, to me, I hate to use it because I feel like the term is a little overused, but like a Karen behavior, wherein it's like, like you've been shocked and scared by the black person. You know what I'm saying? When it's like, no, y'all, we can have a conversation about this. What am I doing that makes the audience feel, or you feel, that I am exhibiting some type of colorism type behavior? That's all it is. And how can we change that? That is so simple. It is so simple. But nobody's willing to do that.
Correct. And you brought up a great point, because I didn't even think about this. I was like, yo, why is she so, like, she got so much energy for Candace, and Candace didn't even say this directly to her, but you're saying that she could be internalizing what the audience has been saying about her and projecting that onto Candace.
Yep.
Dang, that's some deep stuff. Okay, so we're dealing with projection. We're dealing with a fragile ego. It's a lot of things that we see unfolded here. And it just has like the audience in a tailspin. Like, how do we even address this if everyone's continuing to deny that it even exists?
Yeah. And I think the issue is also too, I think that there's probably a level of favoritism that goes into how the network perceives the structure of the show, right? So what I mean by that is, typically there's a face for every franchise, right? I think you could argue that before Nene left, it was Nene for Atlanta.
For sure.
Clearly it's Teresa for New Jersey. Clearly it's Kyle for Beverly Hills. But at one point in time, you could have argued that it was Lisa Vanderpump, regardless. And clearly the face is Giselle. So with that perceived level of favoritism that is already in place in the structure of the franchise, it doesn't make it any easier, because now it is perceived that you already are favored. This is your complexion. Are you now weaponizing that, using that to your advantage? I should say, let me not say weaponize. Are you using that to your advantage so that you can ice people out? Because what it appears to be now is that every time you get into it with a cast member of a darker complexion, and you drop something explosive and they fire back at you with something equally as explosive, you can't take it, and then you choose to ice them out. But if it's a cast member who is the same complexion and they shoot back at you, i.e. Karen, because Karen has loaded a lot of clips at Giselle.
A lot of them.
And some of them were a lot worse than anything that Wendy has ever said to her. So
come on,
me,
sing.
You can get so you can get over that with Karen, but you for some reason now just have this utter disdain for Wendy. Make it make sense, because we saw it didn't happen. Let's take it back to see, because people forget. But let's take it back to season right at the end of season 1. She dropped the bomb about the fireman with Charisse, right? Charisse at some point in time acquiesced, got back into the good graces of, the queen of the franchise, right? The face of the franchise, right? So then you have Monique. Boom. But Monique doesn't back down. Okay. When Monique figured out what was up, she lit a fire under Giselle. Giselle was not able to recover from that. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think that Giselle even liked her anyway. So I felt like it was, as Candace stated, it was to Giselle's benefit that Candace and Monique got into that, because now you get rid of Monique. You give a soliloquy at Monique, but not at Mia. Okay, cool. All right. Which happens after Monique.
And that is colorism.
You would think that if you gave Monique that soliloquy, then you would be giving a sermon to Mia, right? And this is no disrespect to Mia, but we're talking about another altercation that happens on the show where you've already had an altercation that you said you weren't going to stand for, but that one was okay. So it's just
double standard. Yeah.
It's like this systematic thing that just keeps happening. And you look at it and you're like, well, what is going on here? So to the audience, what are we left to think?
Yeah. And even thinking about that, like going further into like how they label these women, women of a darker complexion are often labeled on the show as being aggressive, even when you're the one getting the drink thrown in your face, or antagonistic. I'm even thinking about the altercation they had this year where Deborah, who's clearly a light-skinned woman, was the one who was the aggressor. However, the women who were darker complected were seen as individuals who incited that interaction that they had.
Exactly. Versus, I mean, honestly, if I'm blaming anybody in that situation, I'm blaming my business partner, because you brought this person here to our event, and I need you to understand what this business means to me. Yeah. And it's no disrespect to Ashley, because granted, do I think that Ashley felt that was going to happen? No. Just in experiencing Ashley the way that I have, in social settings, I just don't think that that's who she is. But I do think that if you bring someone to my house and they act a fool, I have to blame you.
That part.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. If there's going to be like accountability, it has to be accountability on all parts. It can't just be certain castmates. And even though these women are now walking around with a brown paper bag saying, I don't like you if you this complexion or darker or whatever, there are standards of colorism that are being upheld within the cast, as you alluded to. Okay, so question about like the responses pertaining to, I'm not colorist. I went to an HBCU. I have brown skinned children. I got da-da-da-da-da. Like, I wonder, do these types of affiliations with Blackness, do they absolve one from being colorist?
I wouldn't say so specifically, because I feel like we're talking about your affiliations versus your behavior. Like, I mean, like they don't. So you are a member of a sorority. You have maybe gone to a historically Black, college or university. You have done all the things. But again, I always go back to school days. Yeah. This is where I was first introduced to how it looks. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, even just the bare mention of that movie, if you know it, you know what the significance is. It's like that just nullifies everything you just said.
Yes. And that was an HBCU campus that they was on with the wannabes and the jigaboos like that. Yes. Like that was real life colorism.
Exactly. Whew.
But I really think like comments like that really just highlights either there's a willful ignorance or you just lack the depth to be able to have these types of conversations, and both are problematic. Yeah. So.
And I struggle with that because, I don't tend to label people, especially, on my platform, like this. I would never say this person is colorist, or I would stop myself before I ever said that. But I do think it's like, at least be willing to take a look at what people are saying and just take it in and just say, you know what can we do to make this better?
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that Giselle had taken that stance, because she's clearly looked at as a leader. And I
Yes.
think that is why the a lot of attention is being placed in her direction, because everyone on that cast knows that the network looks at her as a leader. So if the leader is failing to
Absolutely.
lead in a way that feels, you know, or if they lead in a way that feels morally ambiguous, then the audience is kind of, and the cast has to look like, what are we supposed to
What do
do?
we do? Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I'm going to take heed to what you said, because I typically don't use the word colorist. I usually say colorism. So if I did say XYZ is
No,
colorist,
you
I take that
didn't.
back.
You
Okay,
didn't.
okay.
You didn't. I was just thinking about it. It's something I often think about too. It's like,
Yeah.
because I know that in this discussion, you know, we are, for me at least, I am looking at Giselle, because I feel like she's the roadblock in this instance for me.
Yeah.
And until she's willing to move and flow like water, then
Mm-hmm.
there's always going to be a dam.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And there's a difference between being someone who is like a blatant, I don't like these girls because they dark skin, I'm a colorist, blah, 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 versus someone who behaves in ways that is aligned with colorism.
There you
And
go.
so, yeah. And so, I don't think that any of the Potomac ladies are bad people, but
No.
denying it is definitely aligned with white supremacy. And, we got to address these things.
Yep. And until we're willing to address it, if you can't talk about it, you can't heal from it.
Come on. That's a whole word. Okay. So my last question to you. We just got a good piece of content today from Mr. DJ Richie Skye talking about how Candace was told that she needed to tone down her behavior and her verbiage during the reunion. And I'm wondering, like, what were your thoughts on this?
My thoughts was everyone given this directive?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, I saw this comment posted somewhere. I think it was my girl Taria. I think there was a question posed: has the Jersey cast ever been given that directive? Because if you've ever watched one of those reunions, I mean, while Candace is sharp with her tongue,
Yes.
some of those ladies are, Teresa, I mean, can be downright filthy with hers.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just wondering, I mean, was that directive only given to Candace,
Right.
or was it given to everyone? Because
Yeah.
it seemed like only Candace was the one who got that memo.
And I can see, like, while I was watching Reunion, I'm like, yo, what's going on with my girl Candace? Like, she was literally like biting her cheeks. You can see that she was trying not to say certain things. She wasn't as like, I was expecting Candace to say something back to X, Y, Z, and it didn't happen. So you can literally see it. And so it made sense when we heard that piece of content today about her being told to tone things down. And my response is like, I immediately go to, oh, they trying to police a dark-skinned Black woman. Why are they policing her behaviors? Why are they policing her tone? X, Y, or Z? Because like if they didn't give that directive to everybody, I think that goes back to our first theory regarding, if we can't have these conversations amongst the cast about colorism, production ain't going to do nothing either. And they're also aligning with colorism as well. Sorry, production, but like it is what it is.
It's like, well, what are you doing to put a stop to it?
Exactly.
Are there gonna ever be consequences for some of the actions that some of the cast members have taken that have just kind of gone over the line, which is what has caused Candace to react in the past anyway. So to be honest with you, when I really think about it, as you were talking, I was like, it might have been better that Candace, did chill and kind of relax, because it allowed other people to show us more of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And we found ourselves, I think, even more disappointed when we got to see that.
I feel like a lot of masks were removed this season. We got to
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of people's true characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think maybe, you never know how that could play out with her them encouraging her to play nice for the sake of moving forward, right? Because I felt like if Giselle had opened up, I felt like Candace would have opened up as well, even
Absolutely.
more. And I felt like they could have made some strides towards moving forward, but it just didn't happen, and that was disappointing. It's like watching a movie, right? And I talk about this all the time, like when I'm talking about shows. We love conflict because when we're watching a movie, it's the conflict that takes us, it gets us ignited, right? But conflict without resolution feels like a letdown when you're watching it on television.
Yeah.
So that is why the audience continues to feel this way, because there is no resolution to the conflict. That's not good TV.
Oh my gosh. Yes. You just explained like why I've been so like like dreading Sundays at 8 p.m. It's like
It's not going to be a
constant conflict. Yeah. I feel like Bravo needs to hire you as a consultant, DJ Richie Skye, because you gotta get this together. Like what is going on?
I just love television in general. I love reality TV, and I just, it's a shame because I think Potomac was at one point in time my favorite show, and now it became what Beverly Hills was at one time for me, and that was like, oh my God, I'm cringing watching this, right? And nobody wants to do that.
Exactly. And going back to what you were saying about it being one of the most popular shows, I think a lot of my friends like had Potomac up there, like probably higher than Atlanta at one point. And I'm going to close on this thought. Like, people loved Real Housewives of Potomac because it wasn't like your former actors, your former athletes, wife, blah, blah, blah. These were everyday DMV women that like who were just making a name for themselves, things that they were doing in the community. And we love to see that on TV because they had stuff, they were aspirational, they did things in the community. And now we're seeing things that plagues our community in terms of like Black women, which is colorism and xenophobia, like all these things, but y'all are not addressing it. Like it has the potential to make a great comeback if they were just to address it.
Yeah. And as you said that, I think maybe the parting thought is that you can't have all that good and not have a little bad. But when you do have the bad, you have to address it.
Come on here. Like, period. First of all, thank you so much, DJ Richie Skye, for coming into the building, dropping so many gems and a lot of things for us to continue to think about. Can you let us know what you have going on? I see your book at the bottom of your screen.
Yes. I have a book series. It's called The Wickedest Wives. It is ironically, it's a reality romance mystery series where, an ex-journalist, goes into the world of reality television, and she discovers that it's not all it seems. And there's a little bit of murder, a little bit of, other things going on. So book 2 will be out on May 14th, and you guys can pre-order it on Amazon. It's called The Wickedest Wives, A Vicious Reality.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes, for sure. We definitely gonna support that. So make sure y'all go to Amazon, order DJ Richie Skye's book. Y'all make sure that you tune in next Thursday at 9. No, we changed the time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And don't forget, you have the power to create the emotions that you want to experience. God bless.